A young black boy helped a young female millionaire with a flat tire, and the millionaire fell in love with the young man. "You look like you've been out here all day," the boy said, squinting against the Colorado sun. He was about 19, tall but wiry, with deep brown skin and sleeves rolled up past his elbows. Sweat clung to his neck, and the laces of his worn work boots dragged through the dust as he stepped off the gravel shoulder toward her stranded Porsche. Sienna Taylor lowered her sunglasses, more surprised than alarmed. "I've been here long enough to hate every cactus in a 5-mile radius," she said, brushing a strand of hair from her flushed cheek. The boy chuckled, gentle and genuine. "Mind if I take a look?" She hesitated. Out here, 30 minutes outside Grand Junction with no reception and a shredded rear tire, she didn't have many choices. His eyes met hers, clear, calm, unbothered by the logo on her car or the $1,000 leather flats she'd scuffed trying to walk back toward the last gas station. She nodded. He dropped his backpack, unzipped it, and pulled out a pair of work gloves and a compact toolkit that looked like it had been passed down through generations. "You've got a spare?" he asked, already kneeling at the tire. "In the back, I think," she said, stepping aside. He opened the trunk with a practiced motion, retrieved the spare, and got to work without another word. Sienna folded her arms and leaned against the car, watching in silence. There was something mesmerizing about the efficiency of it, how he didn't waste movement, how he tightened bolts with a kind of rhythm, how the sun bounced off his brow and caught in the dark curls that stuck to his temple. "You do this often?" she asked finally. "Sometimes," he said without looking up. "My uncle owns a shop in town. Taught me everything before he passed." That silenced her. After a few more turns of the wrench, he stood and wiped his hands on his jeans. "You're all set." Sienna reached for her wallet. "Let me..." He held up a hand, stepping back. "No need, ma'am. I'm just glad I came down this road today." Her fingers froze halfway inside the leather clutch. "You don't want anything?" "I've got what I need," he said simply, slinging his pack over one shoulder. She didn't know what stunned her more, his skill or his refusal. "What's your name?" "Jalen," he said. "Jalen Brooks." "Sienna," she offered, almost reluctantly. "Taylor." He nodded once, smiled, and started walking up the hill, the late sun stretching his shadow long across the cracked asphalt. That night, Sienna sat on the balcony of her family's second home, a modern ranch perched over the Colorado River, with a glass of wine going warm in her hand and her phone buzzing uselessly next to her. She didn't check the texts. Not her publicist, not her ex, not the board members who'd turned their backs on her 3 weeks earlier. Her thoughts inexplicably kept returning to that boy. The calluses on his hands, the quiet in his voice, the way he'd walked away. She had everything. Or at least, she had. Until 3 weeks ago when her own company voted to remove her from the CEO seat her father had built for her. They called it a graceful transition. She called it betrayal. But none of them, not her investors, not the tech blogs, knew what grace really looked like. Jalen had shown her that. 2 days later, she found herself driving the same route again, past the gas station, past the rock ridge, slowing at every shoulder, scanning for a familiar figure. Ridiculous, she knew, but something in her wouldn't let it go. At the edge of town, just beyond a line of old mailboxes and a sagging fence, she spotted him. Jalen was up on a ladder, hammering nails into a rotting awning above an old woman's porch. She parked, stepped out of the car, and watched. He didn't notice her at first, not until the woman below shouted, "You got company, hun." Jalen turned and blinked, then smiled, cautious but curious. "Miss Taylor?" "I was in the neighborhood," she said, lying terribly. He climbed down. "Everything okay with the tire?" "Perfect," she replied. but I never got to say thank you properly." He shrugged. "You already did." She looked at the porch, the nails, the bent ladder. "You do this a lot?" "Sometimes people need help," he said. "And I like using my hands." They stood in silence, wind brushing past, the scent of cedar and dust thick in the air. Something passed between them. Recognition, maybe, or respect. Sienna reached into her car and handed him something small, a cold bottle of water. Their fingers brushed. She didn't look away. "Thanks," he said, unscrewing the cap. "I don't suppose you like coffee?" she asked. He smiled, the first full smile she'd seen. "Depends who's asking." She smiled back, just slightly. "Someone who's not done driving this road yet." The cafe sat at the edge of town, tucked between a pawn shop and a closed-down video rental. The air inside was thick with the smell of fried potatoes and the slow hum of a dusty ceiling fan. Locals leaned over chipped formica tables, sipping lukewarm coffee, swapping stories without urgency. No one noticed the woman in designer jeans and a gray linen blouse slip into the corner booth, except the server, who raised an eyebrow at her polished heels. Sienna smiled politely, ordered black coffee, and settled into the cracked red leather seat. Her eyes scanned the window across from her, looking out toward the street where she'd seen Jalen climb a ladder 2 days earlier. The image hadn't left her. The hammer in his hand, the curve of his back as he braced the wood, the quiet rhythm of someone who didn't seek recognition. A bell rang above the door, and a gust of warm air followed a familiar silhouette. He was dusted in sawdust, sleeves rolled, hands darkened by work. Jalen stepped in, nodding at a man behind the counter. When he turned and caught her gaze, his body stilled, just for a second. Sienna stood, her fingers lightly gripping the back of the booth. "Hey." He offered a polite nod. "Didn't think I'd see you again." She gestured to the seat across from hers. "Join me?" Jalen hesitated, then sat slowly, as if unsure if this was a trap or a joke. "I don't usually do coffee breaks with millionaires. I don't usually chase down mechanics," she said, smirking. He chuckled under his breath. "I'm not really a mechanic. You fix things," she said simply. "You fixed me." Jalen tilted his head, unsure what to do with that. "You were just stuck. That's all." "Sometimes being stuck is more dangerous than being broken," she said, quietly. Their coffees arrived. He stirred sugar into his slowly, watching her through narrowed eyes. "So," he said, after a pause, "why are you really here?" Sienna exhaled, glancing out the window. "Honestly, I don't know. I was driving, and I ended up here, again." He leaned back. "You're not used to being curious without a reason, are you?" She met his gaze. "I'm not used to someone walking away from me." Jalen looked down at his cup. "People like me don't usually get asked to stay." A silence fell between them. Heavy, but not bitter. The kind that acknowledged weight rather than trying to escape it. "I grew up in the kind of home where nothing stayed fixed," he said finally. "Mom left. Dad drank. My aunt kept things together with duct tape and prayer. So I learned early. If something's broken and you can't replace it, you better learn to fix it." "And you never ask for help?" she asked. "I ask the sky," he said with a quiet smile. "It's cheaper." She laughed. It wasn't forced. He liked that. He glanced out the window toward the church across the street. "What about you? What brings a woman like you to a place like this?" Sienna looked away, searching for words. "I lost something," she said finally. "Maybe I never really had it, I don't know, but when I left the boardroom for the last time, no one looked me in the eye. They just handed me a check and said, 'Thank you for your service.' like I'd been dismissed from the military. Jalen's fingers drummed once on the table. Sometimes the exit is the best part of the building. She smiled at that. You're good with words. I build fences for a living. He shrugged. Gives you time to think. They sat quietly for a moment, the silence softer now, more familiar. Then Sienna reached into her bag and pulled out a small leather-bound notebook. She slid it across the table. What's this? He asked. An idea, she said. A sketch for something I've been thinking about. A kind of community shop. Tools, mentorship, maybe even training programs. But it needs someone who actually knows how to build things. Jalen didn't touch the notebook. You barely know me. I know what you did when no one was watching, she said. That's more than I can say for most people in my world. He picked up the notebook, turned it in his hands, opened it slowly. Blue ink, simple sketches, rough ideas. But the intention was clear. I'm not sure I'm the right person for this, he said. I'm not sure I am either, she admitted. Their eyes met again. This time, neither of them looked away. Outside, the wind kicked up dust across the pavement. Inside, two strangers sat across a table with nothing but coffee, a dream, and a connection too new to name. Okay, he said finally, voice low but certain. Let's see where this road goes. The Carrington estate was nestled in the Aspen foothills, far from the cracked sidewalks and rusted fences of Jalen's neighborhood. The main house stood 3 stories tall, a marriage of steel and glass, the kind of structure that belonged on the cover of architectural magazines. Spotless windows reflected a sky too perfect to be real. It was the kind of place where every bush had been shaped, and every flower bed had a contract. Jalen stood at the front steps with his hands shoved in the pockets of a button-down shirt Sienna had insisted he borrow. It was clean, pressed, unfamiliar. Just like the world behind those double doors. You sure you want to do this? She asked from beside him, her voice soft. He shrugged, not looking at her. I'm just here for the food. She laughed gently, reached for the brass handle, and pushed the door open. Inside, warm light spilled from chandeliers, and laughter echoed off marble floors. Dozens of guests, dressed in tailored jackets and sequined dresses, mingled around a piano and clinked glasses filled with expensive wine. A jazz trio played softly in the background. Heads turned as they entered. Sienna's arm touched his as they walked. They're just people, she whispered. No, he replied, eyes scanning the room. They're your people. A man in his 50s approached with a practiced smile. Sienna. Finally. We thought you weren't coming. His eyes flicked briefly toward Jalen, then back to her. And you brought a guest. This is Jalen Brooks, she said firmly. He's helping me with a new project. The man didn't offer his hand. Charmed, he said flatly before turning back to his glass. The warmth in the room felt thinner now. Jalen stepped to the side, letting Sienna float into conversations with the ease of someone born into the world of highball glasses and casual dominance. He drifted toward the edge of the room, pausing by a long table lined with hors d'oeuvres he couldn't pronounce. He reached for a toothpick, skewering something that looked like meat, then hesitated and took a cracker instead. You're not from around here, are you? A voice sneered. He turned. A young man, maybe mid-30s, crisp blazer, drink in hand, wore a grin that didn't reach his eyes. Excuse me? Relax. Just making conversation, the man said. Sienna tends to bring home projects. Jalen's jaw tensed. She didn't bring home anything. The man chuckled. Easy, I'm just saying. She's known for picking up lost causes, dogs, startups, strangers. Before Jalen could respond, a quiet voice cut through. Is there a problem here? Sienna. The man straightened. No problem. Just chatting with your friend here. Sienna's eyes locked on him, ice behind the smile. Then find someone else to chat with. The man walked away, muttering into his drink. Jalen turned to her. That's what this is to them? A show? A charity case? She looked embarrassed. He's a jerk. Yeah, but he's not the only one staring. They don't matter. They matter to you, he said quietly. And I don't. She didn't answer. He stepped away from her, out through the side door and onto the terrace. The night air hit him like a confession. He leaned on the railing, looking out over miles of darkness dotted with distant lights. A few seconds later, she followed. I didn't think it'd be like this, she said. He didn't look at her. Didn't think I'd be on display? I wanted you here. Yeah? Or did you want to feel better about yourself? That hurt. She said nothing. He finally turned. His voice was steady, but low. I'm not angry you're rich. I'm angry that you thought bringing me here would make anything easier for either of us. You think I don't see it too? She snapped. The way they look at me since I left the company? Like I'm broken. Like I lost my edge. And yeah, maybe I brought you here because I wanted them to see something good I found outside of their world. He stared at her. Turns out, she said bitterly, you don't want to be seen either. Silence. Heavy and real. Then he said, softer, I've spent my life blending in so I wouldn't get hurt. She stepped closer. I'm not here to hurt you, Jalen. Then don't parade me. That landed. They stood inches apart now, no music, no voices, just the hum of a landscape they both suddenly felt alien to. He glanced away. You don't know what it's like walking into a room and waiting to be called the mistake. She exhaled. Maybe not. But I know what it's like to stand in one and not know who I am anymore. For a moment, the distance between them didn't feel like money or race or history, just two people trying not to drown. He looked at her again. I should go. She nodded, eyes glassy. Okay. He stepped past her, paused. Then, without turning, it wasn't the food. I came for you. And he walked into the night. The afternoon sun beat down on the gravel lot outside Thompson Hardware, where the smell of cut lumber and machine oil hung thick in the air. Jalen stood under the shade of a half-assembled shed, hands deep in a box of bolts, pretending not to hear the car that rolled up behind him. He knew the engine by now, smooth, precise, foreign. Sienna stepped out, trading heels for low boots, her hair tied back, her face flushed, but not from the heat. Jalen didn't look up. You lost again? I was in the area. You rich folks always in the area when you want something, he said, tone dry but not cruel. She took a few slow steps closer, stopping just short of the tools spread across the workbench. I'm not here for a fight. Good, he muttered. I'm tired of those. I wanted to say I'm sorry. That caught him. He glanced sideways. For what? For thinking I'd enjoy being a curiosity in your world? For putting you there, she said. And for not stopping that night when you clearly wanted to leave. Jalen sighed, wiping his hands on a rag. It wasn't about leaving. It was about being seen the wrong way. Sienna looked around. The dust, the wood, the open sky. It was a world far from Carrington estates and curated guest lists. I brought you into my space, she said, but I never gave you room to breathe. He finally looked at her. Why do you care so much? Her voice cracked just slightly. Because you're the first person in years who looked at me without expectation or judgment. You just saw me. That silenced him. And when I lost everything that made people return my calls, when I couldn't walk into my own boardroom without whispers, you were the one who reminded me I still had worth. Jalen folded his arms, guarded. So now I'm your emotional crutch? No, she said. You're my mirror. The one thing in my life that's been honest. A breeze stirred the dust around their feet. Somewhere behind them, a table saw word to life. She reached into her bag, pulled out the notebook she'd once shown him. It was worn now, creased at the corners, full of new pages. I kept working on it. The community workshop idea, mentorship, vocational training. It's not a pitch. It's real. He took it, thumbed through the pages in silence. You don't have to say yes, she added. But I want you to know I meant every word. Jalen closed the notebook slowly. Why me? She smiled, eyes wet but steady. Because you don't need to be rich to be extraordinary. For the first time since the night on the terrace, he let himself really look at her. Beyond the wealth, beyond the chaos she came from, just her. He nodded once. All right. All right. I'll help you build it, he said, but on one condition. What? You stop apologizing for loving something real. Sienna blinked, then laughed, soft, grateful. Deal. Later that week, they sat across from each other on the tailgate of an old pickup parked at the edge of the lot. Plans spread between them, coffee in hand. Dusk sinking into the mountains. Jalen pointed at one of the blueprints. You drew this electrical setup backwards. Sienna frowned. No, I didn't. He raised an eyebrow. She sighed. Fine, maybe I did. He smirked. You're lucky I'm patient. I'm lucky for a lot of things lately. She sipped her coffee, eyes on the horizon. They're going to come after me again, you know. The board, the press. They think this is a vanity project. It's not. They'll say I'm throwing money at a boy I barely know. Jalen shrugged. Then let them say it. She looked at him. You're not afraid? I've been underestimated my whole life. It doesn't scare me anymore. But it does fuel me. Silence again. But this time, it wasn't tense. It was sturdy, like something building. Then he added, almost casually, You're not the only one who lost something. She turned toward him. I lost faith a long time ago, he said. In people, in fairness, in second chances, but you showing up every time, that started something. Her voice softened. What did it start? He looked at her, really looked at her. Hope. The Denver Civic Convention Center shimmered under the late spring sun, its glass panels gleaming like armor. Inside, rows of seats filled with tech investors, media personalities, and startup darlings buzzed with anticipation. A massive LED screen behind the stage pulsed with logos from sponsors and a scrolling agenda of the afternoon's panel speakers. Sienna stood in the wings, microphone clipped, palms damp. You don't have to do this, her assistant whispered. Yes, I do, she said, voice firm. They need to see it. All of it. She adjusted her blazer, matte black, sharply cut, and stepped forward as her name was announced to polite applause. Please welcome Sienna Taylor, founder of Elevate Tech and former CEO of Carrington Green. Jalen watched from the back row, his posture rigid beneath a borrowed blazer. His work boots didn't match the suits around him, but he didn't care. He was here because she'd asked him to be. No, because he wanted to be. He knew what today meant. He knew the vultures were waiting. Sienna approached the podium slowly. Lights blinded her momentarily, but she didn't flinch. She looked across the sea of faces, then down at her notes. She didn't read them. I'm not here to talk about market projections, she began. Or IPOS, or exit strategies. A murmur of confusion rippled across the audience. I'm here to talk about what happens when we lose sight of people in pursuit of profit. when we trade integrity for influence, when we silence the voices that don't wear suits. Now the murmurs turn sharp. You all know I left Carrington Green. What you don't know is why. Behind her, the screen flickered. A photo appeared, not of spreadsheets or solar panels, but of a tool-strewn workbench, of hands gripping wood, of a young man showing children how to build something from scratch. I left because the people I worked with stopped listening. They stopped believing that innovation comes from unexpected places. She took a breath. Last month, I brought a young man, Jalen Brooks, to one of my industry events. You probably read the articles, the comments, the assumptions. A long pause. Her throat tightened, but she pushed through. What none of you saw was what I saw. A builder, a teacher, a man with more wisdom than some of the executives I sat beside for 10 years. She looked toward the crowd, toward Jalen, even if she couldn't see his face. I love him. The room went silent. Not shocked, stunned. And if that costs me your funding, your respect, or your invitation to next year's keynote, so be it. Gasps. Phones raised. The silence burst like glass. She smiled. Just barely. Because I'd rather build something honest with him than keep pretending with any of you. Then she walked off stage. Backstage, her assistant looked pale. Sienna, the press... Let them write, she said, pulling the mic off. I gave them something worth writing. A few feet behind her, Jalen stood frozen in the hallway, having made his way there as soon as the speech ended. You didn't have to do that, he said quietly. I know. You could lose everything. She walked toward him. Then let me lose it, with intention. He looked at her, eyes heavy but alive. You meant it? He asked. All of it? She stepped closer. Every word. They stood inches apart, in the hallway, in the storm. Then I'm staying, he said. A beat passed. Then her voice, soft, cracking, good. That night the internet burned, headlines like fire. Sienna Taylor declares love for unknown builder at Tech Summit. CEO walks away from fortune for a man with dirt under his nails. The backlash came fast. Investors pulled out of her community project. Former board members issued statements distancing themselves. But something else happened too. Letters came, emails, handwritten notes from teachers, veterans, welders, grandmothers. Stories of people who were seen, truly seen, for the first time in years. And among them, one letter stood out. It was from a 12-year-old girl in Detroit. My brother says I can't build things because I'm a girl, but you showed them on that stage. You built something brave. Sienna read the note aloud to Jalen under a sky full of stars, sitting on the porch of the new workshop they were building together. He leaned back, arms crossed behind his head. She gets it, he said. Sienna nodded. Yeah, she does. He turned to her. You know, you didn't just break their silence. What do you mean? You broke mine. 1 year later. The morning sun stretched long across the gravel driveway of the newly completed workshop just outside Grand Junction, Colorado. Where an abandoned warehouse once stood, now rose a beautiful, clean-lined structure clad in pine wood and corrugated steel. Its large front windows etched with the words, Brooks and Taylor Institute. Skills. Dignity. Future. Inside, the scent of sawdust and fresh paint mingled with the aroma of brewed coffee and cinnamon rolls donated by a local bakery. Rows of benches lined the workshop, where young men and women, Black, white, Latino, Navajo, laughed, drilled, measured, built. Jalen stood at the head of the room, wearing jeans, a dark blue shirt, and an apron streaked with chalk. He leaned over a table, demonstrating how to cut a dovetail joint with precision. Every student watched him, not with obligation, but with admiration. He no longer felt out of place in front of a crowd. He was home. Sienna stood by the entrance, greeting community leaders, donors, and old friends. She looked different. Not in wealth or status, but in presence. Grounded. Clear. The phone in her purse buzzed every few minutes with missed calls and press requests, but she didn't glance at it once. Outside, guests gathered around a podium framed by 2 American flags and a backdrop of young trees planted the previous spring. Jalen stepped up to the mic, adjusting it carefully, his hands surprisingly steady. He looked out at the faces, familiar and new, and exhaled. "I used to believe that some people were just born to stay small," he began. "That no matter how good you were, how hard you worked, there were places you'd never be invited into." He paused. "And then I met someone who didn't invite me in. She walked out of the door herself, sat beside me, and listened." Sienna's eyes shone. Several people dabbed tears. "She didn't hand me a ladder. She handed me tools," he said. "And together we built something bigger than either of us." He nodded toward the building behind him. "This place isn't just for kids who want to learn how to build a table. It's for anyone who's been told they don't belong. It's for the ones who fix things quietly, who don't wear suits, who know the value of calloused hands." He smiled, voice low but resonant. "It's for the ones like me." Applause erupted, but he didn't move. He let the moment breathe. Then he added, with that signature pause of his, "We named it Brooks and Taylor. But the truth is, this house doesn't belong to us. It belongs to the future." Later that afternoon, when the crowd had thinned and the sun dipped low, Jalen and Sienna sat side by side on the back steps of the building, watching a few kids chase each other across the field behind them. She leaned her head on his shoulder. "You nailed it." "I didn't stutter," he teased. "Nope. You just turned every grown man into a puddle." He laughed, but there was something deeper in the sound. Something healed. "Do you ever miss it?" he asked. "The old world?" Sienna shook her head. "Not for a second. I didn't lose power. I just found a better way to use it." He nodded. "You remember what you said to me? A year ago? After that conference?" "Which part?" "That loving something real was worth losing everything else." She looked up at him. "Yeah?" He held up her hand, kissed her knuckles. "You were right." That evening, as dusk softened the edges of the sky, the workshop glowed from within. Light spilling from its tall windows, laughter echoing from inside, the clatter of hammers and dreams. An old pickup pulled up slowly along the side of the road. Mrs. Temple, the retired school librarian, rolled down her window and looked out with misty eyes. She'd lived in this town her whole life. "They done turned a scrapyard into a sanctuary," she whispered to herself. She wasn't wrong. Inside, Jalen helped a student line up a drill. "Easy pressure. Let the tool do the work." The boy looked up. "You ever get scared?" Jalen smiled.